Chapter 11 of Freckles. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Freckles by Jean Stratton Porter, Chapter 11, wherein the butterflies go on a spree and Freckles informs the Bird Woman. "I wish," said Freckles at breakfast one morning, "that I had some way to be sending a message to the Bird Woman. I've something at the swamp that I'm believing never happened before, and surely she'll be wanting it." "What now, Freckles?" asked Mrs. Duncan. "Why, the oddest thing you ever heard of," said Freckles. "The whole insect tribe gone on a spree. I'm supposing it's my doings, but it all happened by accident like. You see, on the swale side of the line, right against me trail, there's one of these scrub wild crab trees. Where the grass grows thick around it is the finest place you ever conceived of for snakes. Having women about has set me trying to clear out those fellows a bit, and yesterday I noticed that tree in passing. It struck me that it would be a good idea to be taking it out. First I thought I'd take me hatchet and cut it down, for it ain't thicker than my upper arm. Then I remembered how it was blooming in the spring and filling all the air with sweetness. The coloring of the blossoms is beautiful, and I hated to be killing it. I just cut the grass short all around it. Then I started at the ground, trimmed up the trunk near the height of me shoulder, and left the top spreading. That made it look so truly ornamental that, idle-like, I chips off the rough places neat, and this morning, on my soul, it's a sight. You see, cutting off the limbs and trimming up the trunk sets the sap running. In this hot sun it ferments in a few hours. There isn't much room for more things to crowd on that tree than there are, and to get drunker isn't nowadays possible." "Well, I'll be dawned on!" exclaimed Mrs. Duncan. "What kind of things do you mean, Freckles?" "Why, just an army of black ants. Some of them are sucking away like old topers. Some of them are setting up on their tails and hind legs, fiddling with their forefeet and wiping their eyes. Some are rolling on the ground contented. There are quantities of big blue bottle flies all over the bark and hanging on the grasses around, too drunk to steer a course flying, so they just buzz away like flying, and all the time sitting still. The snake feeders are too full to feed anything, even more sap to themselves. There's a lot of hard-backed bugs, beetles, I guess, colored like the brown, blue, and black of a peacock's tail. They hang on until their legs of them are so weak they can't stick a minute longer. And then they break away and fall to the ground. They just lay there on their backs, fably clawing air. When it wears a bit, up they get and go crawling back for more. And they so full they bump into each other and roll over. Sometimes they can't climb the tree until they wait to sober up a little. There's a lot of big black and gold bumblebees done for entire, stumbling over the bark and rolling on the ground. They just lay there on their backs, rocking from side to side, singing to themselves like fat, happy babies. The wild bees keep up a steady buzzing with the beating of their wings. The butterflies are the worst old topers of them all. They're just a circus. You never saw the like of the beauties. They come every color you could be naming, and every shape you could be thinking up. They drink and drink until, if I'm driving them away, they stagger as they fly and turn somersaults in the air. If I leave 'em alone, they cling to the grasses, shivering happy-like, and I'm blessed, Mother Duncan, if the best of them could be unlocking the front door with a lead pencil even." "I never heard of anything so surprising," said Mrs. Duncan. "It's a rare sight to watch them, and no one ever made a picture of a thing like that before, I'm for thinking," said Freckles earnestly. "Nah," said Mrs. Duncan, "you can be pretty sure they dinna. The Bird Woman must have word in some way. If ye walk the line, and I walk to town and tell her. If you think you can wait until after supper, I am most sure you can gang yourself, for Duncan is coming home, and he'd be glad to watch for ye. If he doesna come, and not any passes that I can send word with today, I really will gang early in the morning and tell her myself." Freckles took his lunch and went to the swamp. He walked and watched eagerly. He could find no trace of anything, yet he felt a tense nervousness, as if trouble might be brooding. He examined every section of the wire and kept watchful eyes on the grasses of the swale in an effort to discover if anyone had passed through them, but he could discover no trace of anything to justify his fears. He tilted his hat brim to shade his face and looked for his chickens. They were hanging almost beyond sight in the sky. "Gee," he said, If I only had your sharp eyes and convenient location now, I wouldn't need be troubling so." He reached his room and cautiously scanned the entrance before he stepped in. Then he pushed the bushes apart with his right arm and entered, his left hand on the butt of his favorite revolver. Instantly he knew that someone had been there. He stepped to the center of the room, closely scanning each wall and the floor. He could find no trace of a clue to confirm his belief, yet so intimate was he with the spirit of the place that he knew. How he knew he could not have told, yet he did know that someone had entered his room, sat on his benches, and walked over his floor. He was surest about the case. Nothing was disturbed, yet it seemed to Freckles that he could see where prying fingers had tried the lock. He stepped behind the case, carefully examining the ground all around it. Close beside the tree to which it was nailed he found a deep, fresh footprint in the spongy soil. A long, narrow print that was never made by the foot of Wesner. His heart tugged in his breast as he mentally measured the print, but he did not linger, for now the feeling arose that he was being watched. It seemed to him that he could feel the eyes of some intruder at his back. He knew he was examining things too closely. If anyone were watching, he would not want him to know that he felt it. He took the most open way and carried water for his flowers and moss as usual. But he put himself in no position in which he was fully exposed, and his hand was close to his revolver constantly. Growing restive at last under the strain, he plunged boldly into the swamp and searched minutely all around his room. But he could not discover the least thing to give him further cause for alarm. He unlocked his case, took out his wheel, and for the remainder of the day he rode and watched as he never had before. Several times he locked the wheel and crossed the swamp on foot, zigzagging to cover all the space possible. Every rod he traveled he used the caution that sprang from knowledge of danger and the direction from which it would probably come. Several times he thought of sending for McLean, but for his life he could not make up his mind to do it, and with nothing more tangible than one footprint to justify him. He waited until he was sure Duncan would be home, if he were coming for the night, before he went to supper. The first thing he saw as he crossed the swale was the big bays in the yard. There had been no one passing that day, and Duncan readily agreed to watch until Freckles rode to town. He told Duncan of the footprint and urged him to guard closely. Duncan said that he may rest easy, and filling his pipe and taking a good revolver, the man went to the Limberlost. Freckles made himself clean and neat and raced to town, but it was night and the stars were shining before he reached the home of the Bird Woman. From afar he could see that the house was ablaze with lights. The lawn and veranda were strung with fancy lanterns and alive with people. He thought his errand important, so to turn back never occurred to Freckles. This was all the time or opportunity he would have. He must see the Bird Woman, and see her at once. He leaned his wheel inside the fence and walked up the broad front entrance. As he neared the steps he saw that the place was swarming with young people, and the Angel, with an excuse to a group that surrounded her, came hurrying to him. "Oh, Freckles!" she cried delightedly. "So you could come? We were so afraid you could not. I'm as glad as I can be." "I don't understand," said Freckles. "Were you expecting me?" "Why, of course!" exclaimed the Angel. "Haven't you come to my party? Didn't you get my invitation? I sent you one." "By mail?" asked Freckles. "Yes," said the Angel. "I had to help with the preparations and I couldn't find time to drive out, but I wrote you a letter, and I told you that the Bird Woman was giving a party for me, and I wanted you to come, surely. I told them at the office to put it with Mr. Duncan's mail." Then that's likely where it is at present," said Freckles. "Duncan comes to town only once a week, and at times not that. He's home tonight for the first in a week. He's watching an hour for me until I come to the Bird Woman with a bit of work I thought she'd be caring to hear about." "Is she where I can see her?" The Angel's face clouded. "What a disappointment!" she cried. "I did so want all my friends to know you. Can't you stay anyway?" Freckles glanced from his wading boots to the patent leathers of some of Angel's friends and smiled whimsically. But there was no danger of his ever misjudging her again. "You know I cannot, Angel," he said. "I am afraid I do," she said ruefully. "It's too bad. But there's a thing I want for you more than to come to my party, and that is to hang on and win with your work. I think of you every day, and I just pray that those thieves are not getting ahead of you.